believe that we who are the children of slaves, who have given 400 years of our sweat and blood and have never got nothing in return for our labor and our lives, we believe that we should be separated in a state or territory of our own, and it must be fertile and minerally rich with an outlet to the sea. 8 or 10 states. We want everything that we deserve and nothing less, and that is something we need to live on and die on, because if we do not do what is required of us, then our children will not have any future.
America stands atop a pinnacle that no nation in modern history has occupied. Allah says in the Quran, I give you power and rule by turns to see how you act in such an historic position that no nation in the past has ever achieved. How will you act? I am from America, the greatest nation on this earth, but I believe with all my heart that the American people are a people that will do what is right if they know the truth. The question is, who will tell them the truth and who will block the truth from getting to the American people that they may demand a change from their government.
Everybody else got to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction. But America got stockpiles of it. Why can't another nation have it? Because America wants to dominate the world and frighten the world and threaten the world that the world will bow down to America and not to God. But there's a people in America that will never bow down to this enemy. When you see a black man stand up in the most powerful government on earth and speak as I speak and walk as I walk and live as I live and don't care nothing about that enemy, then you ought to know God is not to come. God is already present. He's here. He's in the world.
My dear family, brothers and sisters here in the UIC Pavilion and in venues all across the country, let us now put our hands together to receive and to welcome the man who is in our midst today, the greatest black man that I know in the world today, a voice for the poor, a voice for the oppressed, the voice for the disenfranchised, a champion of the cause of truth, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Well, here is his beloved wife, the First Lady, Mother Khadija Farakhan, and here coming is her husband, the man whom we all love, the man whom we recognize as a divine leader, teacher and guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Happy Pages Day. Love you. Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
Thank you. Thank you. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. The greatest of God's mercies is that whenever human beings get off of his straight path, he raises from among the people someone to whom he reveals some of his secrets, his wisdom, in what is called divine revelation, that those who hear and those who carry into practice what the prophets and messengers of God teach may be guided to the right path, to the path of God's divine favor. This is why, as Muslims, we thank Allah for Moses or Musa and the Torah. We thank him for Isa or Jesus or Yeshua and the Gospel or Injil. We thank him for Muhammad ibn Abdullah and the revelation of the Holy Quran. I am a student of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I could never, ever, ever thank Allah enough for his coming. In the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever, and for his searching among us to find one with a heart full of love for God, love for truth, love for us, that love would give him courage and make him fearless in delivering a message of warning to the government and people of the United States of America, and good news to the government and people of the United States of America, and warning to the entire world of human beings, and good news for them as well. I thank Allah for having met and been taught by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I greet all of you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. First, I want to thank all of you who came to this venue and to the over 113 venues in the United States watching this by satellite, and those who are watching in the Caribbean and Central and South America, those who are watching by satellite in the United Kingdom, in France, in North Africa and West Africa and South Africa, in the Middle East. I thank you all for the honor and the privilege of allowing me into your homes wherever you may be watching this, and allowing me to share with you what I believe will be helpful to you. I thank Allah for these wonderful brothers and sisters who grace this rostrum. I am honored beyond words by your presence. To my wife, my extended family, to all of the believers and your hard work to make this Savior's Day probably the greatest in the history of our nation, I thank you from the depth of my heart for your hard work and your sacrifice
to make this day possible. Thank you. I want to thank all the participants in the workshops who brought the breadth and depth of their knowledge to this subject of reparations. What does Europe and America owe? And what does Allah, God, promise? I want all of you to know that for several months, I have been in study and preparation for this moment. There's something burning within me that I am compelled to say. And I only hope and pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable in the sight of Allah, and that He will open your minds and your hearts to hear what we have to say. February the 26th is a day that has been set aside by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to honor the birth of a man that came to us from the holy city of Mecca in Arabia, who was born on February the 26th, 1877. Master Farad Muhammad. He's 127 years of age today. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that he was and is the great Mahdi. Mahdi, or Mahadiya, means one who comes to guide to the path of God, and one who is self-guided. No wonder it is written in the Quran, He it is who sent His messenger with the guidance and the true religion. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't just bring religion, he brought guidance. Because if you have religion and not guidance, you may not carry the religion into practice properly. So without guidance and religion, you can have zeal, but zeal coupled with ignorance makes us religiously dangerous. Fanatics, if you will. We do not wish to be fanatical over our faith in God. We want to practice His religion with guidance so that we become examples of righteousness and moral rectitude in the midst of a world that has gone astray. But this is Black History Month. The last day of the month, a leap year. I want us to leap into the knowledge of our history and how beautiful we are as a people. Have you noticed of all the cultures, the ethnic and racial groups that live in the United States, no one else has a history week or month but us. There's no Irish History Week. There's no Italian History Week. There's no Jewish History Week. There's no Romanian History Week. How come? Because every one of those people know who they are. When Carter G. Woodson recognized that a people, a whole people, were robbed of the knowledge of their rich history, he knew that a people without the knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. We're dead. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive and is best qualified to reward the researcher, because history develops the springs and the motives of human action. So when one knows what was, that springs him forward to produce what is and makes a future. But when one does not know what was, one cannot understand the reality of what is, and then is unqualified to prepare a future for himself or herself and our progeny. So wise men study, and women study history. There are those who are born, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, with the gift of prophecy. They can see into the future. This is a gift from God. But there are also those who can see the future and predict it closely by a careful study of history. So this is Black History Month, and Master Farad Muhammad brought us a rich knowledge of ourselves and our history that takes us back far beyond the cotton fields and plantations of the South. But he takes us back to the very origin of our being as direct descendants of the Creator. Listen, my desire today is to reach the world with this serious message on the principle of reparations. What does America and Europe owe to black people? What does God promise? In the word reparation is the word repair. In this sense, repair today will be used not as a noun, but as a verb, which means an action taken that will repair damage done. When something is repaired, you bring it from a broken state back to its original state or condition. Then it can be said it has been repaired. The whole human family is in need of repair, because according to the scriptures, Satan has overcome the teachings of God's prophets and has caused most of the human family to deviate from that which Allah, God, has set down as the way of life that he desires for human beings to live. It is written in the scriptures of the Bible and Quran that this world is not God's world. This world is Satan's world. And we have been under the rule of Satan for 6,000 years, but Satan remains a mystery. And God also remains a mystery. But the knowledge of one and the revelation of one is the revelation of the other. So I wondered to myself, why did Elijah Muhammad one day call me and say, brother, I don't want you to use the term devil anymore. I want you to use the term Satan, the enemy, the slave master's children. Well, being a young man and kind of not smart, you know, I didn't ask him, why? And I didn't know why, and I didn't ask him why. But now I'm beginning to see why. Because the culprits that have to be called out is a satanic group that has dominated the world of politics, the world of religion, the world of education, the world of justice, the world of economics, and the people under Satan's rule may think they belong to God. But if we judge our actions by the standard of behavior laid down by God and his prophets, Satan has been so clever, such an arch deceiver, that he has made evil fair seeming to mankind and man. And therefore we are so confused today, we don't know what is right or what is wrong, what is good or what is evil. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to us that Satan is so wise, he has deceived the whole world. Are you in the world? Are you sure? Then are you and I of those who are deceived? If he deceived the whole world, what would he deceive the world on? Satan has to deceive the world about God. He has to deceive the world about religion. He has to deceive the world about Jesus, the most important figure of your scriptures. The scripture says Satan would be so wise, he would curl his tail, this is in the book of Revelations, and bring down a third part of the stars of heaven. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this means not taking down ordinary people. He's taking down the scientists and the scholars of religion. This is why Paul said, we don't wrestle or war with flesh and blood. We are flesh and blood. The fight is not with flesh and blood. The fight is with principalities, powers, the rulers of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness in high places. So if you and I can't deal with the devils on our level and become one ourselves, hello. But many of us that think we are of God, we're raising a lot of hell. You know what I mean? So we got to get clear today on who is with God and who has Satan deceived. Now, dear brothers and sisters, this Satan, by deceiving scholars of religion in Islam, in Christianity, in Judaism, this causes scholars to look at the book and the revealed word and misinterpret it, leading millions of people astray who believe that they're on the path of God, but they have been devoured by Satan. Listen, in the book of Job, the sons of God came to present themselves to God, but the devil came also with them. Now, how could the sons of God be hanging out with the devil and not know it? So here comes God now, who knows it. He don't speak to the sons of God. He speaks directly to Satan. He said, "Whence comest thou, Satan?" And Satan had to answer. He said, "I come from walking up and down, to and fro in the earth, seeking whom I may devour." I hear theologians say we are all the children of God. That is a lie. Don't get angry with me. We all have the capacity to become children of God. But there's a choice that we have to make, because Satan is out here campaigning for minds and souls and infecting the people's spirit. And God is doing the same. So God has children, and Satan has some too. And these two may be hanging out today, but maybe after today, you might look to your right or to your left. You might look to your bedroom and the boardroom and say, "My God, I did not know that I was sleeping with, I was walking with, I was married to a child of the enemy." What does Europe and America owe? And what does God promise? I want to ask a question. Do you think the prophets saw the transatlantic slave trade? Do you think the prophets of God saw the 400 years of slavery that historians say is the worst and most cruel slavery ever put on a human being in the annals of history? Do you think that the prophets saw this? We would have to conclude that if they wrote of the end of time, they had to see the horror of the transatlantic slave trade, and they had to have written somewhere in the Holy Writ about it. They had to have seen Africa and the sons and daughters of Africa ripped away from her shores and Africa brought to ruin. Africa put in a condition that Africa is in today, in spite of the fact that Africa is the birthplace of civilization. Did the prophets see it? I believe they did see it, I believe they did right about it. But then let's ask this question. How many of you have listened to religious programs by various scholars and teachers of religion that come on television? How many of you have listened? Would you raise your hands? I'm raising mine because I love to listen. Yeah. Okay. Have you ever heard any scholar of Christianity, Judaism, or Islam talk about the transatlantic slave trade and the suffering of black people in America? Talk back to me. You never heard it. Well, don't you think we should ask why? If it was that horrible, why didn't the Jewish scholars talk about it? Why didn't Christian scholars talk about it? Why didn't Muslim scholars talk about it? Is it that we don't exist in their hearts and minds? Or do they think that others in the world in less serious condition than ours can receive warning and guidance from Allah, but we, the blacks in the diaspora and in Africa, have no place in the heart of God? When you look at the condition of black people in America, in the Caribbean, in Brazil, in Central and South America, in Africa, in the Isles of the Pacific, do you ever think, does God grieve for us? Who needs a God that don't think about us? Who needs a God that does not care for the suffering of an entire people? If the scholars of religion have not considered black people at all, we join your churches, we join your mosques, we join the synagogues. We've gone to the Communist Party, we've gone to the socialist parties, but I don't hear none of you talking about a condition, nor do you have the power to heal it. And oftentimes, you don't care. So I want to put Jews, Christians, and Muslims to thinking. I want the world to know Farakhan is not now, nor have I ever been, a hater of the Jewish people. I say that without a tongue-in-cheek because I'm unafraid of what you can do to me. You can only do to me what my God allows you to do. And whatever he allows you to do, I'm prepared to receive it by his grace. I am a Muslim, and I love the Muslim world. But I'm going to raise some hard questions today. I grew up in the church, so don't tell me I don't love Jesus. Not only do I love him, but I believe I'm walking in his footsteps.
We know that this horror of the transatlantic slave trade is written of. We know that our sojourn in slavery is written of. But where? How was it written? And what should we expect from the knowledge of such? I want all who are watching, all who are listening, black or white, rich or poor, wise or foolish, government or non-government, I want to talk to all of us. And I'm not filled with hatred. I'm not filled with bitterness. Because our suffering that is undeserved, as Martin Luther King said, is redemptive. Now we're going to deal with it today, and I want you to walk with me. Because God has given all of us the power to reason. So I don't want to be emotional. I want to be very rational. And I don't want those who have honored me by sitting on the rostrum with me not knowing what I was going to say. I'm deeply concerned because what's in my heart, I gotta say it today. If I never live another moment, I have to say it today. Now, the reason I'm taking this time to set a framework for discussion, because many people who are nationalists, who are communists or socialists, have no respect for Bible or Quran. And that's understandable because of the way it's been used. But I wanted to set this lecture on reparations. What does Europe and America owe, and what does God promise in a spiritual context? Because reparation is a political term. Justice is spiritual and political. For reparations, you have to appeal to a government. And they may listen or they may not listen. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that when we lie down, justice lies down with us. And when we get up, justice gets up with us. Justice is not concerned with the World Court or the International Criminal Court or the local judge and the local court. Justice, that God has set the balance in the universe that could cause Jesus to say, "He who lives by the sword will die by the sword." He who has led into captivity will go into captivity. And a man shall reap what he sows. And the prophet Obadiah says, "As thou hast done, so shall it be done unto you." That law has nothing to do with courts. It has everything to do with the highest court, the universal court of the divine supreme being. Now let's set the framework for repair. Both the Bible and the Quran start with the creation of a human being that was created or made in the image and the likeness of God. That's big from a biblical standpoint. That's
big. Because if you and I, regardless of your color or race or ethnic roots, are made in the image and the likeness of God, then all of us are born with potential to rise above any reality and create a new one. It's within you. Listen carefully. The Quran says it differently. The Quran says that Allah made the human being to be Khalifa, God's vicegerent or the successor of God, who rules God's creation in his name by his permission. That's as high as you can get. But the Quran and the Bible say Satan caused Adam's foot to slip, and he fell from his high, lofty position. The Quran bears witness in the same language. In fact, the Quran is really a verifier of the truth of the Torah and the gospel. That's why every one of you should have a Quran and read it, because it verifies exactly what God sent down through the mouth of his prophets in the Bible. Okay. Now, this man that slipped, he had a wife. So you have Adam, Eve, and they had children. Now, mind you, they had fallen. So they produced the first dysfunctional family. Adam, not Adam and Steve. I'll get to that later. But the book says Adam and Eve. And then they had two children, Cain and Abel. But envy was between the two children. If I'm a creature created in the image of God to be God's Khalifa, my destiny is to rule God's creation in his stead. Man. Then if Satan caused my foot to slip, or Adam's foot to slip, and he fell from the original position and condition, so you cannot repair the human being that has fallen unless you restore him to his original condition. We've taken our cars to shops. The assessor has come out and said, well, the damage is so and so. But then when you paid him the money and drove out, just down the block, the car stopped running. Now, either that was a crook or he was a bad mechanic. But what we wanted is our car brought back to its original condition. Through envy, hatred, and murder, two brothers came up. And from one man, God made humanity, according to the Quran and the Bible, into tribes and families. But those tribes and families show the same characteristics of Cain and Abel. Boy, that's really rough. When Cain was about to kill his brother, God spoke to him and said these words. Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? Sin lies at the door. Anger. Cain was angry because he felt God favored his brother. That anger
Envy produced hatred. Hatred produced murder. And Cain slew his brother. From that day to this, murder, hatred, envy, revolution, war, and anger is completely throughout the human family. All because of our fall from our original position. So the whole human family is in need of repair, but there's a segment of that family that has fallen even further than all of the rest, and that is why we've taken this subject. What does America and Europe owe, and what does God promise? Now here's a book written by Gary Wills. It's called The Negro President. You thought it was Clinton, huh? Jefferson and the Slave Powers. Here's what he said, quote, "It is a fact that through much of our history, Americans have shied away from slavery as too divisive or hot an issue, leading to a great national amnesia about the impact and the reach of slavery." Now wait a minute. Here's a Caucasian. He says Americans are suffering from amnesia about slavery. It's too hot an issue. It's too divisive. Don't talk about it, please, for God's sake. Because if you talk about it as a white person, I'm going to feel bad. Well, when I went to the hospital to deal with cancer, I was feeling bad too. And I didn't want nobody to operate on me. But if it meant they would save my life, come on and cut away. And they gave me a beautiful anesthetic, put me to sleep, and when I woke up, I looked at the doctor and said, "Boy, now I know why our people love drugs." When I woke up, I didn't remember nothing that had happened bad to me. Gary Wills goes on to say, as our understanding of the role of slavery in our past grows, it will become clearer just how much slavery has affected all aspects of American life. Now think about that. Slavery has affected all aspects of American life. So, in my brother Randall Robinson's book called The Debt, he said that unless white people are willing to look at slavery and the impact that slavery has on black people's present mental, moral, spiritual, social, and economic condition, unless you're willing to look at that, we will never heal the racial divide in this country. Okay? Now, this is why I was begging Allah to please guide my words, because it's not my intention to make you sad over slavery or make white folk mad over slavery,
But white folk do not know what happened to us. And they don't know why they're in the privileged position that they are in today based on what happened to us. So it is this that I'm hoping that black and white will consider. For if America is unwilling to look at the horror of the transatlantic slave trade and what happened to us as a people, there will never be a chance for good relations between black and white. Now, the type of relation that you have right now, that's not a good relation. That's go along to get along relationship. Now, I don't want to get along if I just got to go along with the mess that's being handed to me and our people in American life. I don't want to do that. And I will never encourage black people to submit to the madness that is going on to us and just go along in order to have a white man smile at you and pat you on the back and treat you like a dog that they have called out of the backyard. I don't mind a smile. I don't mind a pat on the back. But what I want is for America to consider what was done. I know the present generation of whites had nothing to do with what happened to us. And therefore, their argument is, we didn't do it. We didn't do that. I don't know what y'all crying about. I ain't never lynched no Negro, colored person, African American. I've never lynched none of you people. So why don't y'all stop whining? And if you don't like America, then leave it. Go on back to Africa where you belong. Well, I got news for all of you today. I got some news for you. I'll tell you the good news in a minute. It says now, see, if white people, if the government of the United States first, Congress, the Supreme Court, state legislatures, governors are willing to look at the problem, just look at it, you will see something that will give you a different thought about what is justice and why black people continue to cry out for justice. If you look at it and gain the true knowledge of what happened to us, and you black people don't know either. That's why you can walk around willy-nilly, laughing and joking and playing and dancing and popping your finger and shaking your backside because you don't know what happened to you. And anybody that tries to teach you, they call them a hate teacher. There's not a Jewish person in America who is unaware of the Holocaust. If you can find me one Jewish child that is unaware of what Nazi Germany did to the Jewish people, I ain't gonna say I'm gonna give you some money, because you'll lie and tell me they didn't know. But you can't turn on your radio or your television without somebody telling you of the horror of what happened in Nazi Germany to Jewish people. The Jewish people are taught to remember so that they can stand up and say, never, never, ever again. I want us to become so filled with the knowledge of what happened to us and our rich historic past that we will rise as a people and say and mean it, never, ever, ever again. As a student and representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, whom we believe Allah God has raised as a warner and a bearer of good news, not only to us, but to the government and people of the United States and to the people of the world. Because the peoples of the world, the nations of the world, right now are in the throes of divine judgment. And if you don't know what's happening from a scriptural prophetic viewpoint, you may find yourself losing your life today, being in the wrong place with the wrong one at the wrong time. See, a new government is coming in, and it will not be headed by President Bush or Tony Blair or Gerhard Schroeder or the Italian Prime Minister Berlusconi, thank you, and the Japanese Prime Minister or the Chinese President. No. Everybody, they had their day. See? You believe in Jesus? Let me see the hands of those who believe in Jesus. All right, good. What did he say? His kingdom was not of this world. He came in the name of the Father to establish a kingdom on earth, a righteous kingdom where everybody, regardless of their race, their creed, or their color, if they believed in him, all artificial barriers would be broken, and they would be the foundational stones of a new government that will replace the governments of the earth who have misused their power and authority over the people that they did not create. And I'll tell you something. As this lecture proceeds, I'm not going to keep you that long, but as this lecture proceeds, I hope to show you how every leader that has risen in America, in Africa, in Asia, in Central and South America, that is for the people, must be destroyed by the satanic powers that are ruling America today. We're going to get to that in a minute. Now, England and America, if they don't wish to look at this, they won't be a part of the solution. They'll be the problem. And that problem
is going to be removed today by the power of the Lord of the worlds. Now, I know that as a people, we believe that America is all-powerful. I know. And there's no question that America is very, very powerful. But so was Pharaoh. So was Nero. So was the Khosrows of Persia. Everybody that thought they had that kind of power, time and the motion of people toward freedom set them down. So if I were President Bush, I wouldn't worry about weapons of mass destruction that you can take away from Libya or Iran or North Korea. Can you imagine that? America, the only nation on earth that used it, got enough weapons of mass destruction that she can destroy humanity 30 times over. And who's next? England, who has been the #1 terrorizer of the darker people of the earth. She got weapons of mass destruction. France, another colonizing power, brutally suppressing people of Africa, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. But they have weapons of mass destruction, and that's all right. But no people of color should have one to produce détente. Listen to me good, politicians, please. As long as Russia had it and America had it, there was mutual annihilation possible. Let's talk. Let's talk. If they have and you don't have, then the arrogance of their having makes them difficult to talk with at the negotiating table. Israel is an occupying power. She has weapons of mass destruction that she can destroy the whole Arab world. That's why they won't be successful peace talks. For what? You can't bring nothing to me. I got it. And my big brother in the West will back me up. So you Palestinians and Arabs, take what I give you. It's the most liberal offer. But it's not justice. It's not fair. But even if China didn't have it, but China does, or even though they don't like China, let's talk. Let's talk about things. Got rockets that can reach our shores. Let's talk. Oh, yes, let's. I'm going to give you most favored trading status. I hate your guts, but you got something that I'm scared of. Let's talk about it. When you're dealing with a bully and a coward, if you don't have juice, he walk all over you. So China got it. But China had problems on her eastern border with India, so India now has it. India and Pakistan don't get along, so now Pakistan has it. Libya had it, but decided, well, I see a bullet coming. You know the Matrix? He dodged that one. May Allah bless you, Brother Gaddafi. It's a wise move. You don't need it anyway. But I'm going to say this to America. Even if you got everybody in the world to give up theirs for favored status with you, what you're going to have to deal with is the power of an angry God today. And I'm telling you straight up, you can't win. That's why I want to talk to you about what God promises and give you a chance to do what's right. Now, I'd like to lay the first foundation of Scripture of our suffering. The Bible says Abraham went to sleep one night, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And God said to Abram, know of a surety that your seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. That's a promise. That's a promise. Here's the first time that a prophecy is made of a people going into a state of bondage and affliction for 400 years, and that God was going to judge the nation that the seed of Abraham would serve. And afterwards, they're going to come out with great substance. That's a promise. The next time we see a bondage situation set up in the progression of history was the children of Israel being in bondage in Egypt. And in their bondage and their suffering, it's written that God heard their moaning and their groaning on account of their harsh taskmasters. He didn't send somebody. He said, I think I will go down and see whether the cry is altogether that I have heard. And that's when Moses saw a light and traveled toward that light. And the scriptures of the Bible call it a burning bush. And God spoke to Moses and told him, take off your shoes. The ground where you stand is holy. I got a mission for you, Moses. What is the mission, Lord? I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him that I said, let my people go. Moses was shook. Moses was frightened. Moses knew he had an impediment of speech. He says, send my brother with me. He's eloquent of speech. But God told Moses, who made your mouth? I made it, Moses. Don't worry about your slowness of speech. He said, well, who should I tell him sent me? Who? He said, tell him, I am that I am. I said, well, what you mean by that? I am is the present tense. Mean I'm present. I'm in the world. And I've come to deal justice to Pharaoh. Go tell him what I said, and don't be afraid. I'm with you. Well, you know the history. I don't have to go over that. 10 plagues hit him. The last one was the plague of death. Then he said, Lord, get him out of here. Get him out.
And then after he said, get them out, he said, hell no. Bring the army. Kill them. Kill them. And that's when God stepped in and slew Pharaoh's army. The Quran says he saved Pharaoh's body, even though he drowned. Because at the last minute, Pharaoh going down in the water, glug, 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 glug. He said, I bear witness that there is no God but the God of Moses and Aaron. And because he bore witness, God saved his body. It's over in the museum in Cairo. What did he save his body for? So that a man like President Bush can go and look at a Pharaoh that was powerful but is dead and powerless, so that he will know that the same God that dealt with Pharaoh is well able to deal with the power of the government of the United States of America. Now, please, I don't want to frighten nobody. But I just have to get this off of me. If I never speak again, I have to get it off of me. But look at this. History progresses. The children of Israel are brought out of Egypt. Today they celebrate Passover to remember the favor of God to the children of Israel. God favored the children of Israel time and time again. But now, if you move to the book of Deuteronomy, God is talking to Moses. Listen to his words. I am going to raise them up a prophet like unto you, Moses. And I'm going to put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. So now Moses becomes a prototype of a man that would come that would be like Moses. Well, you can't have a man like Moses unless you have a people like the children of Israel. You can't have a man like Moses unless you have a king like Pharaoh. You can't have a man like Moses unless you have 400 years of brutal treatment. When I was studying plane geometry, they had a theorem that goes like this. If side angle side of triangle A is equal to side angle side of triangle B, then these triangles are said to be congruent. Dear Christians and Muslims, I got to talk to you. Jesus fit some of the picture. I want to reason now. I don't want you to walk away from me. The historical Jesus did not act or be a man like Moses. He was not a slave. Even though he was in the Roman Empire, they were under Roman rule, but he was not a slave. They had never been in no bondage in Palestine for 400 years. And the Roman king did not have 10 plagues that brought him down. There was an angle and a side that might have agreed, but it's not congruent. All right, dear Muslims, come on, let's talk now. I'm talking to my Muslim world. Musa and Prophet Muhammad were not congruent. The prophet brought a revelation and a divine law like Moses brought. But the prophet was not a slave in a strange land. He was born in Arabia, and he lived in Arabia, and he worked in Arabia, and he died in Arabia, but there was no king in Arabia like Pharaoh. Come on, talk to me. So while there is some similarity, the two are not congruent. Jews and Arabs say we are the seed of Abraham. How? Well, the Jewish person will say, I'm from Isaac. And the Arab will say, I'm from Ishmael. Oh, okay. But you're talking about a genetic relationship. Oh, but you missed the boat. It ain't about your genes. This Quran says Abraham was neither a Jew or a Christian. He was an upright man, and he was not of the polytheists. Let's reason. Let's reason. Abraham is the father of modern monotheistic religious thought and belief. Right? Abraham existed before Judaism came into existence. And Abraham existed before Christianity came into existence, because Christianity came into existence after Jesus. Jesus didn't know anything about this religion that you named. His word, he knows about his word. He knows about obedience to God. But Jesus never said, I am a Christian, therefore you must be a Christian or you won't see heaven. You can't find it in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Well, man, what has this got to do with our suffering? See, the promise of God is with the seed of Abraham. Now, the Jewish people who are not so religious, but more political, they're called Zionists. They wanted first to get Uganda, and then they changed their mind. They wanted another place. I can't remember what that was. Argentina, thank you. But then they settled on Palestine, which was a protectorate under the British rule. In fact, if you study what happened to the caliphate that was set up by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Western thought was never to allow a caliph to rise over Islam. So they broke up the region and set up these little states: Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the Arab Emirates. This was set up by the British to foster nationalism in the place of the universal message of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Follow me now. This History Week. I have a verse in the Quran that I would like to read. I want to thank my helpers who did the research and stayed up all night. Putting my words together. And I told them, well, put it together, but I got to leave room for God to guide me. I mean, I did my best, but listen to this verse from the Quran. Allah is talking to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to the new Muslim converts that followed the Prophet. And he said these words, "You are the best nation raised up for men. You enjoin good and forbid evil, and you believe in Allah. And if the people of the book had believed, it would have been better for them. Some of them are believers, but most of them are transgressors." Who are the people of the book? Jews and Christians. Some Christian scholars are saying Muslims want to kill Christians and Jews and call them infidels. That is a lie. The people of the book are the Christians and the Jews. The Quran says, if the people of the book had believed, it would have been better for them. Some of them are believers, but most of them are transgressors. I want you to follow me now, because we're coming right to the slave trade. Now look, in this audience are Christians and Jews and Muslims. All of us want to be right. But this Quran says some Christians really believe and they're trying their best to be Christ-like. Some Jews believe, trying their best to follow the laws, statutes, and commandments of Jehovah or Yahweh. But the book says most of them now are transgressors. Well, dear Muslims, you once were the best nation raised up for men. Not now. You're in the same condition as the Christians and the Jews, for you have deviated from the path that Prophet Muhammad laid down. And this is why he said, 3 generations after me will no longer be of me. And this is why he said the Mahdi would come and Jesus would be with him, because he would come to guide the transgressors back to the straight path, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. Now, this part is going to hurt. But I've been trying to give you a little anesthetic because I don't want to hurt you. I want this operation to be successful. We got to cut out this cancer that exists on the religious body of Muslims, Christians, and Jews. You will agree that Abraham was before Judaism, and Abraham was certainly before Christianity. Yet all of those prophets, all the way to Prophet Muhammad, looked to Abraham as the father of that kind of righteousness that makes you favored in the sight of God. To the Jewish people who are Orthodox Jews, I don't like that word, Orthodox, but those who are striving to live by that law that Moses and the prophets gave them, they are still looking for the Messiah. At Passover, they have what is called Seder. They open the door and leave it ajar. They set their table, and at the head of the table, there's a cup. And the seat is for Elijah, but some Jewish scholars say an unknown guest. Keeping the door open for Elijah, setting a place at the head of a Jewish table for Elijah is to say, keep your door of your heart open for the Messiah. Set a place at your table for the Messiah. Even though he's an unknown guest, at some point in time, you will know him. Malachi is the last book of prophecy in the Old Testament. It means my messenger. In Malachi 4, 5 and 6, it says, behold, before the great and dreadful day of the Lord, I will send you Elijah. And Elijah's going to turn the hearts of the children back to their fathers and turn the heart of the father back to the children, lest God come and smite the earth with a curse. Elijah is a forewarner of the Messiah. He's unknown, but you got to look for him. But if you don't see no good in black people, our pain and suffering don't mean nothing to you. You don't see us as a human being. Suppose the unknown guest knocks at your door and he's black. I want all Jews and Christians to listen to me. Would you accept him? If he fulfilled all of the signs that the prophets predicted, would you keep your heart open and receive him? Would you sit him down at the head of your table? Because if he represents the Messiah, he's the head of all righteous Jews. And the righteous Jews know that their ticket to the promised land comes through the Messiah. The Jews have not believed that the Jesus of 2,000 years ago was in fact the Messiah, and that is why today they keep looking for him. Theodore Herzl was not he. David Ben-Gurion was not he. Golda Meir was not he. Those people have led you into a horrible condition. Do you think that God only promises the righteous Jew that part of the earth? The righteous Jew? Mm-mm. One who's going to be like Abraham? The Bible says, count the stars. Can you count them? You can't count them. He said, well, if you can't do that, go to the sand and count the sands. You can't count that either? Neither can you count the seed of Abraham. That means that Palestine is not only going to belong to the Jews, the earth will belong to the righteous, and the wicked who are a burden on the earth will be destroyed from the face of the earth by the Lord of creation. Now, let's look at now, since we've already seen that there has to be a man like Moses. Well, the only condition on earth that resembles that is what the transatlantic slave trade brought into existence. How long we've been in America? A little over 400 years. Is it a strange land to us? Are we strangers? They sure treat us like one. Have we been afflicted for these 400 years? Do you have in the leadership of America a power 100 times greater than the power of an ancient Pharaoh? Do you have an affliction 100 times greater than the affliction of the children of Israel in Egypt? Then the book says, God will come, and God will raise from among them, us, a man like unto Moses, and that man will speak what God has commanded him and do as God has commanded him. Now, I want us to look at the transatlantic slave trade and how we can see what America and Europe owe. It ain't gonna be that long. But this History Week. Now look, scholars say that about 15 million, that's the lowest figure, were brought out of Africa. Some, like W.E.B. Du Bois, says around 50 million. Others say maybe 100 million. But Africa was raped of black people. Now look at this. You remember talking about the Middle Passage? Now you young black brothers and sisters that are in your 20s and 30s, how many in the audience are 30 years old and younger? Okay. Now, you don't know what the older ones in here know about how bad it was to be black in America. You think now, because you can turn on your TV and look at a black man romancing a white woman, or you can turn on Oprah and see this beautiful woman with this most beautiful heart who's a billionaire. And when you see her, you say, oh man, we have arrived. You see the great Judge Mathis holding court, coming out of the ghetto to rise now to a position of honor and respect. You see Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant. You see the great basketball players, football players, multimillionaires. And you say, oh boy, we're making it. America's all right. But I want to say to all of us who have a nice home, a nice car, a little money in the bank, some success, do not allow yourself to be used. Listen, listen, listen. As a mannequin in the window of democracy to sell a lie to your poor brothers and sisters who are suffering in the ghettos of America. You cannot rise above the condition of your people. If our people are nothing, then how can Judge Mathis be something? If our people are nothing, how can Bill Cosby be something? If our people are nothing, how can Mayor Barry be something? You are a nigger that escaped, that they allowed to be who and what you are, so that the masses will be deceived. Look at it. Look. Muhammad Ali came and visited me recently. I was so glad to see my wonderful brother. But Muhammad Ali had a mantra that he kept saying, and I didn't understand it. He said, Brother Farakhan, still a nigger. I said, Ali, I said, don't say that. So help me God. I said, Ali, don't say that. I felt offended that as great as my brother is, he would say over and again, still a nigger, brother. And you know what? Ali left my house, and a few months later, I caught on. I'm a little slow. What I think he was saying to me is, though I may be on a Wheaties box, though I may have endorsements, though I may be the most popular fighter in the annals of history, in their eyes, I'm still a nigger. You can be the best singing nigger, the best dancing nigger, the PhD carrying nigger, the right reverend doctor nigger. But in America, go ahead. You never escape being what the masses of your people are. Now, why is this? I've never heard a preacher greater than T.D. Jakes. I admire his preaching. Every time I can hear him on the television, I listen to my brother. I love Bishop Patterson of the Church of God in Christ. When I turn him on, I happen to just turn my dial, and if he's preaching, I don't turn it away. These are great preachers. Reverend Price, great preachers. You can preach till the cows come home. If we can use you, we'll use you till we use you up. Oprah Winfrey went out to California, saw a beautiful home, they tell me, that was on sale for $12 million. No, my sister got paper. Long paper. And I'm very proud of her. I really love her. I love Oprah Winfrey because she is one of the sweetest souls you will find, but money has not made her whole. Money don't make a black man or woman who was a child of those brought across the Atlantic Ocean whole. Is there a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole? Is there a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul? Nothing that we have achieved has healed us as a people. Political office don't heal us. When you get there, you know you don't have any power. The power that you have is the power they allow you to have. And when you step over the line, they cut you off and leave you with nothing. Now listen, this don't mean that our politicians are not valuable. But it only means that they are not powerful enough to really make a change. They do the best they can, and they are valuable. Congressman Conyers is the one who brought legislation into the Congress, not to give us reparations, but just to study it. Just let's open up a dialogue about it. Let's talk about it. The bill hasn't come out of committee, from what I hear. Is that true, Congressman? Well, dang. Excuse me. I gotta try to be civil. But if the government does not even want to study a problem as it concerns us, what are we gonna do to get reparations? Reverend Al Sampson took them to court. Is that right, Reverend Al? What did the judge do? Threw it out. Why? The court is the brother of the robber, the murderer, and the thief, and the kidnapper. The court ain't gonna give you justice. One brother will knock you down, and the other brother will come say, did my brother do that? My brother's so awful. Then later that night you see him with his brother, talking about how they done in the nigger. Ain't no justice for us with that. That's why I got to talk about what God promises. Because right now, this question of reparations is the hottest thing that any black person could talk about. But why won't we talk about it? Because we want to go along to get along. We are slaves with a slave mentality who want the approval of white people rather than to confront them for justice. If we keep talking about reparations, the smile is going to stop. The pat on the back, the hand will have a bat in it. Because if you press them too hard, let's say what you're going to do about it. Them little pop guns that we sold you in the ghetto, just enough to get you killed. What you gonna do about it? And all of us gonna tremble when they roll tanks in, because they got them ready. Armored personnel carriers, police now dressed like SWAT teams. What you gonna do? What does God promise? The Middle Passage was a horror. Slaves packed like animals aboard slave vessels. Slaves shackled in pairs, the right arm and leg of one chained to the left arm and leg of another. Men were separated from women, but all were confined below deck and packed into slave quarters. These quarters were no more than 6 feet long and not high enough to allow an individual to sit upright. The conditions were miserable. Slaves were forced to lie naked on wood planks, and many developed bruises and open sores. The unbearable heat below deck, mixed with human excrement and vomit, produced a terrible stench. The unsanitary conditions were breeding grounds for diseases like dysentery, smallpox, and measles. Slaves died from these diseases, and many more died from malnutrition. Slaves were fed twice a day rations of fish, beans, or yams that were prepared in large copper vats below deck. And those who refused to eat, hoping to starve themselves to death, were force-fed. The slave women were many times the subject of abuse and rape by the ship's crew. There were many slaves who attempted to escape by hanging or starving themselves to death or jumping overboard. This does not include the untold whippings and beatings that the slaves endured to keep their fear high in order to limit the opportunity for mutiny. Those of us that survived the Middle Passage, they don't want to talk about how you got robbed of your name, your language, your culture, your religion, your God, and your history. That's a subject they don't want to deal with. And that's why they mark the time of our arrival to 1619. Have you ever wondered why they had a program on television called the $64 question? Then the $64,000 question? Why 64? Why not 63? Why not 65? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the first slaves came to North America on a ship named Jesus, captained by an English slave trader named Sir John Hawkins. Some called him Sir John Hopkins. In the year 1555. And from 1555 to 1619 is 64 years of the hidden history of how they broke a proud black man and turned him into a slave, blind, deaf, and dumb. The Quran says the vilest of beasts are the blind, the deaf, and the dumb. What happened? They mated us. You heard Tavis Smiley the other night ask me, playing the devil's advocate. He said, well, what about all these unwed mothers and all this drugs and all this stuff that black people are doing? And I say, yes, brother, but that's a condition. That's an effect. What's the cause? There was the breaking of the slave, then the breeding of the slave, then the selling and merchandising of the slave. You were broken because they took the babies from the mother. That's why you don't know your mother tongue. And mama would go and pray in a loud voice so that you could pick up the name of Allah, because most of the slaves that were brought out of Africa were Muslims. Those that came from West Africa, the Songhai, the Mali, the Ghana Empire, these were Muslim empires. Timbuktu, the great learning centers of the world. They didn't want no jive black person. They wanted the strongest, the young, the wisest, the best. They raped Africa of millions of people. Have you read about the Spanish Inquisitions? What was that all about? It was all about persecution of Jews and Muslims. For the Muslims ruled Spain for nearly 1,000 years. But they wanted to kick Muslims and Jews out of Spain. So when the Jews were punished and beaten and murdered, they left Spain. Where did you go? Went into the Caribbean. Went into South America. And you became plantation owners. This is why many Jewish people don't want us to talk about reparations. I'm not a hater. Just get that out of your mind. My passion is for truth and justice. But no Jewish person who will be brave enough to read your history will come away saying your hands are clean. Here's a book. Where's my book? Here it is. It's called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. One of our brothers, Brother Allen, did research in Jewish libraries. He never quoted a rabbi or Jewish scholar who was a hater of the Jewish people. He put out this book. I had a dinner engagement with Rabbi Marx, the late Irv Kupcinet, and the Rabbi Shalman, former dean of the Board of Rabbis in Chicago, and George O'Hare, who sits here today. George O'Hare can bear me witness. We had a lovely dinner, and at the end of the dinner, Rabbi Marx pulled a piece of paper out of his pocket, and he said, Minister Farakhan, this is a love feast, but it's going to be tough love. And he said, I have conditions. If you want to be a friend of the Jewish people, this is what you're going to have to do. Number one, he said, we have to watch you over a protracted period, your words and your deeds, before we can establish friendship. Second, this book, Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, which may be on sale tonight when you go out. He said, this book is a great calumny against the Jewish people. I want you to stand up and denounce this book. And third, he said, nobody who has ever been against the Jewish people have ever been written of well in history. You're a very talented man, Minister Farrakhan, and we would like your friendship. Now, you can answer these things now, or you can wait till we go upstairs and have some coffee. I say, well, I'm prepared to answer now, but let's go upstairs and have some coffee. Y'all all right? When we got upstairs, he said, you have your truth, and we have ours. I said, with all due respect, sir, there's only truth, not yours or mine. But you may have a different perception of that truth than I. And I quoted from the Torah, from the book of Isaiah. Justice stands afar off, and equity cannot enter because truth has fallen in the streets. I said, if there's not truth between us, then there can never be justice and peace between us. So now I will answer your your harsh love or tough love. I said, first of all, there's more history of your people's evil toward us than ours toward you. So maybe we have to watch you for a protracted period of time before we admit you as a friend. I said, now this book, I'll denounce it tomorrow because I don't want anything attached to my name that is a lie. But if this is a calumny, a lie, then tomorrow I want you to stand up and condemn every rabbi and every scholar that we quoted as a liar. And when you do that, then I'll condemn the book. Last but not least, I said, I want to be your friend because that's why I'm here. But if to be your friend means I have to deny the truth, then yours is a friendship I don't need, and yours is a friendship I don't want. I said, now if you come against me, and I'm saying this because I know the government officials are watching me, I want the privilege of taking the black man's case before the Congress of the United States of America. I don't want no weak, knee-bending, back-scratching Negro to argue for us. I said to them, if you come against me, as long as I stand on truth and stand with God, I'll be the winner. I said, and if the government of America comes after me, long as I stand on truth and stand with Allah, I'll win over the government. Now, why do I speak like this? Am I crazy? Do I need medical attention? Do I need to spend some time in a mental institution so you can help me with drugs to give me balance? But Isaiah the prophet said, to who will believe our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? When a father wants to impress a child of his strength, he rolls up his sleeve, shows him his arm. I know the arm of God. That's why I can't fear man and what man can do. I was born to die, and so are you. But to die like a miserable ant screaming and begging for mercy. From a heart that don't have any. On the slave plantation, we were branded like you brand a horse. And there were harsh punishments. I know how difficult it is for a Jewish man or woman to talk about the horror of Auschwitz. You can't talk about that without getting tears in your eyes. And I can't talk about this without weeping. I can't forget the cries of the slaves in the dungeon. And I'm challenging all that lead our people. Keep the cry of your suffering people in your ears so that you will never settle for porridge or a white woman in a Cadillac car and false honor for justice. Listen to this. Blacks were subject to the cruelest punishments for acting on their desire for freedom or for the slightest infraction. Lynchings, corpse mutilations, beheadings, live burnings, and ritual displaying of amputated body parts was commonplace. There are many recorded cases of impalings of the severed heads of Africans as a warning to other blacks. Whippings were cruel and sadistic, resulting in acute blood loss, shock, and infection, and were often fatal. One former slave wrote of having witnessed a black man being forced to whip his own mother to death. The shrieks of horror were often audible for miles. Blacks were suspended by their wrists or stretched across the ground before a cowhide or paddle beating. These bloody, flesh-gouging floggings would sometimes last for hours, consisting of hundreds of lashes before mustard, cayenne, salt, or turpentine would be applied to their wounds to prolong the torture. Pregnant women were forced to lie face down in a whipping hole dug out for her belly so she could be whipped while preserving her valuable slave infant. Some blacks were whipped until their skin was completely removed, and the slave who was forced to apply the whipping was subject to the same if the slave showed any mercy. This is why a black policeman today, to prove he hates his own, will sometimes beat us worse than the white man. This is the way we were bred. This is why, black woman, you get no respect. Because we were forced to have sex with you, not to marry you, but to have sex with you, to produce babies for a slave master. And today they have a hell of a nerve to talk about our immorality. Our little bastard children. I read about a black woman in slavery who had 4 children. And the day had come that the slave master was going to sell her children away from her. They sold 1, they sold 2, they sold 3, but when it came to her last child, she broke through the ranks and ran to the foot of the slave master and bowed down at his foot and begged him, crying, "Please don't sell my last child, and if you sell him, could you sell with him so I could be with my child?" The slave master looked down at her and kicked her and stomped her. And as she crawled away, crying and shrieking, her last child was sold away. Why do you talk like this, Farakhan? Don't you realize you're stirring up hatred? Is this why some of you don't like Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ? How many of you saw the movie? I saw it. How many of you saw the terrible beating that was administered to Jesus? The scourging of Jesus, beating him till his body was raw. I saw it. I heard people in the audience crying. One woman couldn't take it and had a heart attack and died because to see her Lord beaten like that, it brought up out of her heart compassion. That's one man. But if you would read this book, Without Sanctuary, I want every white child listening, every white family listening, go get this book, Without Sanctuary. I couldn't even read it. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. If you could feel the pain of Jesus in that brutal whipping put on him by the Roman soldiers, then read what happened to our fathers. And they did nothing to Jesus that has not been done to us, and then some. The only problem that Reverend Al and I might have with the movie. See, I understand, Mel, I really understand. You had enough heat as it was, but if you had made him black, if you had followed that part of the scripture and put a little more color in his face, since his mother Mary was an Egyptian woman and his father Joseph was a black man, and Jesus said, I am the seed of David, the root of Jesse, the bright and the morning star. Paint him as he is. See, but if he were black, If you did that to him, Mel, maybe the shrieks in the audience would come up, kill the nigger, burn that nigger. I know that nigger did something wrong. I know I'm talking to the whole world. But neither Arab, Christian, or Jew feel the pain of black suffering. And I'm going to tell you why. That's why all you scholars can talk about God and the kingdom, but you don't mention the transatlantic slave trade. You don't mention the horror of our suffering. Here's why. It's because of something called the Hamitic curse. Now, I know this is kind of rough, you know, but according to the Babylonian scholars, writers of the Talmud, not the Torah, but the Talmud. Now I want you to listen. Come on, come on, come on. Don't walk away from me now. I know it's painful, but you can't correct the wrong if you don't know it. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I want us, hopefully, to look at the horror of what was done to an entire people. And I want you to confront your hypocrisy. See? You know that in the Bible, Noah's son that laughed at his father's nakedness was cursed. The Bible don't say he was cursed black. The Bible just said he was cursed. But as black people, you were made to believe that the color of your skin was a divine curse. That's why some black people didn't want the first person in their house on New Year's Day to be black, real black, because that means bad luck would follow them the whole year. And some of us right now, in 2004, got a color problem. Look at this now. The Hamitic curse was written of in the Talmud 400 years after the birth of Jesus. And the way they wrote it was, I gotta find the exact words because it's really powerful. I just want to read what the Talmud says, since most blacks don't know the Torah or the Talmud. And many wish that I wouldn't do this, but I can't help it. I gotta do it. Oh, Lord, come on now, let me find that. I'm gonna take my time. Oh, boy. Well, I'm gonna say it. In the Talmud, they talked about because he looked at Noah in that condition and mocked it, the redness of his eyes, turning of his head, made these kinks in his hair, thickness of his lips. That's our features. We were black and cursed. Now you can tell me, oh brother, that's not true. But I'm going to tell you, it absolutely is true. See, you, so-called Jews, I'm not going to give you the credit for being one of those that obey God. You portrayed us. You know what images do. That's why you jumped on Mel Gibson. But you painted us. Big lips, red eyes, kinky hair. You put us in the movies like that. You mocked our characteristics and made us to hate God's creation of us. You did that. Hollywood did that. Step and Fetch It, Mantan Moreland, Amos and Andy, Butterfly McQueen. Run the road. You take our strongest, more courageous black minds. You think we don't see you? And you put us in Hollywood. You give us television shows. And then we got to buck our eyes. So we got all these blacks in Hollywood now in a modern step and fetch it role. Laughing when ain't a damn thing funny. You allow them to prostitute you for $1. I got a call from a black man from Hollywood. I hope you don't mind me saying it. Maybe I better not. Yeah, I'm gonna say it. He don't mind. He don't mind. Because he's a strong black man. His name is Yaphet Kotto. They didn't want Yaphet Kotto to keep that name. Change it. I'm sure they wanted him to be Tim Witherspoon. But Yaphet Kotto sounds too African-like. He said they offered him a part in Cabin in the Sky. They want to do it again with him as the lead. And he said, Farakhan, I can't accept these roles. I've been a man in movies. I've stood up as a man in movies, and now they want me to play these degraded roles. I can't do it, and they're hot with me, they're angry with me. But I'm telling you, Hollywood, leave that brother alone. Let me tell you something. Your days are numbered. The finger has written on the wall in blood. Mene, mene, tekelu fasin. Your kingdom has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Black man and woman, you gotta stand up. Money is not more important than principle. If they can print money, they print it every day. It's a $50 bill. You buy a little crack. Ulysses Grant. He ain't my brother. He ain't my friend. This 50 won't do today what $3 used to do 40 years ago. This money is being devalued. And you sell your soul for $1. A strong black man, Wesley Snipes. See him in The Blade. See him in his movies with these karate steps. Blah, blah, bam. And they offer you $15 million to play a woman. What happened? What happened? All that strength that you showed giving young black boys, I want to be like Wesley. I want to be like Snipes. Then you come out in a dress, and the boy is confused. I'm almost finished. It hurts me too to have to say this, and I can't say it easy because I'm filled with passion. Yeah, passion of Christ, passion of Muhammad, passion of the prophets, passion for truth. When you understand how we in slavery made England rich. Europe and America benefited from the slave trade. I want to show you the banking institutions that were spawned by slavery. The Dutch West India Company, the British East India Company, all these companies thrived because of slavery. And from them, capitalism got its start and its growth. Slavery spawned the European Industrial Revolution. And out of that came banking institutions that have taken over the world. I'm coming to it. The transatlantic slave trade was the foundation of the European economic system of capitalism. Oh, man. African slavery was the cornerstone of the development of European colonial enterprises in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, Central and South America, and the English colonies that became America. Here's the European nations that participated in the slave trade: Portugal, Spain, Holland, France, and England. The English conquered and enslaved the islands of Barbados, St. Christopher, the birthplace of my mother, called St. Kitts, and Nevis, the birthplace of my grandmother, Antigua, Montserrat, and Jamaica, the birthplace of my father, which the British took from the Spanish. The French conquered and enslaved the islands of Martinique, Guadeloupe, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Dominique, Haiti. I'm going to talk about Haiti for a second. The Portuguese conquered and enslaved the islands of Cape Verde off the western coast of Africa, Sao Tome and Brazil. The Spanish conquered and enslaved the islands of Hispaniola, present-day Dominican Republic and Haiti, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Panama, and traded, excuse me, slaves in Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Argentina, and Guatemala. Blacks all down in there. The Dutch conquered and enslaved the islands of Curacao, St. Eustatius, Tobago, and parts of Brazil. The slaves in the Caribbean, all you West Indian people listening to me this morning, I want you to listen good, because all you think you're free, eh? You better know the West Indies made Europe. You don't want to ask for nothing? The English colonies, well, I mean, products produced in the Caribbean, tobacco, indigo. No, don't cut me off. I know you don't like what I'm saying, but give me, keep the volume there. I'm gonna help you. In Brazil, slaves were not only used on the sugar and coffee plantations, they were used to mine gold and diamonds that were discovered. The English colonies that ultimately became America amassed their wealth through the capitalist enterprise of the transatlantic slave trade in the north and the development of the plantation economy in the south. The English colonies in New York, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts were directly engaged in the commercial activity of the slave trade. Capitalist enterprises such as banking, shipbuilding, and insurance companies were developed to promote and sustain the slave trading business. Now, between 1500 and 1750, the slave trade was the largest employer in Holland and Portugal. Barclays Bank has its financial foundation set deep in the heart of the transatlantic slave trade. Its founders, David and Alexander Barclay, established the bank in 1756 with the profits that they made in their slaving business. Lloyd's of London was a coffee shop, a coffee house. It could not have become one of the biggest finance capital forces in the world without its legacy of dabbling in and insuring British slave ships and their cargoes. Europe and America, wealthy because of slavery. Look, those of you listening in the United Kingdom, there's a city there called Bristol. It was the slave and sugar trades which made Bristol the second city of England for the first 3/4 of the 18th century. A local analyst wrote, "There is not a brick in the city but what is cemented with the blood of a slave. Sumptuous mansions, luxurious living, liveried menials were the produce of the wealth made from the sufferings and the groans of the slaves bought and sold by the British merchants." Now, after slavery was abolished, and did you know that in the United States, before it became the United States, they were arguing in Congress. I mean, in the, what do you call it, the Constitutional Convention, arguing about you. And guess what they were arguing about? The issue of slavery was the central debate at the convention. The northern delegates would not regard the slaves in any light except as property, and took the position that slaves could not be counted as persons to determine representatives to Congress. But the southern delegates demanded that blacks be counted equally as whites. Not because they thought we were equal, but they wanted more representative power in the new nation. So there was a compromise called the 3/5 compromise. So in Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States, it says, and I quote, "Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. So that's how you became 3/5. And guess what? In the first 100 years of this nation, 70 of those years were ruled by Southerners because they counted us as 3/5 of a human being. And they argue over you now, not because they love you. What can they get from you to enhance their position? 10 of the 16 first presidents of the United States were slave owners. That's why when the current generation of white people say, well, we didn't do nothing. Yeah, but the government of America did. And that's why we have to petition the government. All right. These people fought to extend the slave trade. And the transatlantic slave trade, as horrible as it was, there was another compromise, and they allowed it to exist for 20 more years. The slave trade ended in 1808, but slavery continued. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm going to stop on this now because the history is something that you can read. But I want you that don't know what happened to you. It's written in books. But if you won't read, you'll go along for the ride. Right now, there's a great election coming up. And there you will be used again. Democratic leaders I woke up somebody that would sleep on the second row. They thought I was blowing a weapon of mass destruction. Black people are so angry with President Bush that they are willing to give Senator Kerry a free ride. That's not wise. That is not wise. You notice how frightened the Democrats are that Ralph Nader has decided he's going to run? Because the 5% that he got in the last election could throw the election to President Bush. So Democrats are saying, hey, damn, look, man, get out of this. We want to get Bush. But what will you get in the place of Bush? I wish that Reverend Al Sharpton, who has been brilliant in the debates, but he knows, I know, you know, we know, they know, he ain't gonna be no president. But let's look at this. Suppose we said, we don't want to give Kerry a free ride, or Bush, because we were all Republicans at one time because of the deceptive trickery of Abraham Lincoln and made you think that you were free. So all of us were Republicans until Franklin Delano Roosevelt came up with the New Deal and dealt from the bottom of the deck, and We got on welfare, WPA, and all of that, and he's been a champion for us. And for 16 years, for 4 terms, he died in the 4th term. He was elected president, and we've been Democrats ever since, even though the Democratic Party was the party that was for segregation, was for slavery. Talmadge and Bilbo, you need to read them crackers. I mean, those people. You need to read about them. Yeah, all the way up to the 60s. Look at this. Suppose, just suppose, you notice in these debates, ain't nobody raised serious questions about our issues. See, they lumped us in with poor people. I don't even know whether we are a statistic. They say there's 35 million poor people. Some people say it really is as high as 100 million, but we need to end poverty. Everybody need a job. Don't that sound good? It tickles your ears, don't it? Let me tell you something. There's 9 million Americans unemployed. And the unemployed Americans, when they create a job, more than likely, you won't get it. The factories are closing and moving out of America. Industry, manufacturing, going out of the country. Even some high-tech jobs moving out of the country. President Bush says it's okay. I mean, this is all right. So we say in NAFTA, we say in the World Trade Organization, good. But what will that do for you? But suppose we call Reverend Sharpton in and said, look, Reverend Sharpton, let's ask all black voters to hold their vote and let you and a group of skilled people put before either party a program where there's benefit for us as a people. Then you become more powerful than NATO, and people gotta listen to what you gotta say. You may not get everything that you want, but at least you won't get a speech. You didn't hear me. A speech at the convention. We don't want that. We want some action. Okay? Now, Reverend Sharpton is brilliant. But if you surround him with John Conyers, surround him with Ron Walters, surround him with people that know politics and want to get to American government our issues. What happened to racial profiling? What happened to police brutality and mob attacks? What happened to putting reparations on their mind? Talk about the death penalty. Talk about the uneven sentencing for crack cocaine as opposed to powdered cocaine. Talk about the game that's being played on black people, filling prisons with our men and women. Talk about the movement of crack cocaine from the government. Talk about our issues. A good Jew will never let a politician get his vote unless you can speak effectively to Jewish issues. Black people never give away their vote until you force these people to speak to your issues. And now, in my conclusion, getting rid of Bush and getting John Kerry and leaving the neocons in place will mean that you'll get more of the same. Who are the neocons? See, people like Crystal, Wolfowitz, Pearl, Rumsfeld, Cheney, all of these people are the architects of an imperial program and policy to make America, listen carefully, the power to control the world, but using black bodies, brown bodies, and white bodies to preserve and protect Israel. No, I want you to listen. These neocons came to Bill Clinton and offered him the plan to remove Saddam Hussein. Are you listening? Bill Clinton didn't go for it. He shot some rockets in Sudan, blowing up a pharmaceutical plant, shot some rockets into Afghanistan trying to kill Osama bin Forgotten until President Bush saw his numbers slipping, and now Osama bin Forgotten is back in the news again. Have you noticed? I'm going to end this, but I got to show you what's about to go down with the help of God. Look, President Bush, when he came into office, had it in his mind to destroy Saddam Hussein and have a regime change in Iraq. He said this long before 9/11, that his administration was committed to regime change. Once the president says that, and the neocons are the architects of that, then the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Miami Herald, the Los Angeles Times, Newsweek, Time Magazine, U.S. News World Report, CNN, Fox Radio begin the propaganda barrage. Saddam is a terrible man. Saddam is a bad man. Saddam messed up the land. Saddam is a bad man. So damn Saddam. You know. And after they beat those drums, they take a poll. What do you think? We ought to get rid of Saddam. Before they make a move, they have to make you think that the man is wicked as hell. Yeah, he did wrong, but he ain't done no more wrong than American presidents. He gassed his own people. Well, how the hell do you think you're in this condition? Somebody been gassing you. Somebody been experimenting on you. Somebody been misusing you. The Hamitic curse has made Christians, Jews, and Muslims see black people in an inferior light. Did you hear me? Hegel, Kant, and Dewey, the father of the American educational system, all of them see blacks and Africans as inferior, and they've put it in the educational system. That's why when I was in the kindergarten, the first thing they taught me was about little black Sambo. Dick and Jane and Spot. See Spot run. Spot was a white dog with a black spot. And that's the only thing we could identify with. Oh, look at the spot on Spot. And we grow up hating who we are. There's a videotape that my sister allowed me to see of a white American teacher who was told and did tell how she was told how to kill the inspiration of black children in school. Go read Malcolm's autobiography and see what Malcolm was told when he was in the 8th grade and he wanted to be a lawyer. And they told Malcolm, Malcolm, my people are not going to hire you and your own people don't trust you, but you'd make a great carpenter. Now that was in Lansing, Michigan. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. And I was 10 years old. I played the violin. And my teacher asked me, Louis, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I would like to be a doctor because I want to heal people. She said, oh, Louis. She said, my people will never hire you as a doctor and your own people wouldn't trust your medicine knowledge, but you play the violin beautifully. What was she telling me? This is not an accident. You gotta watch your children in these schools. These little black boys go to these warehouses and they're smart as hell before they get to school, and by the time they're 6 and 7 and 8, they're dumb as hell. Why? There's a program to destroy black children. I'm right there. President Bush knew that that man didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. Since 1991, they were in there destroying weapons of mass destruction. But look at the case that our brother Colin Powell made before the United Nations. He compromised his own integrity. They used him with skewed information from the intelligence community, and they marched off to war. Black boys, black girls, white girls, Hispanic boys, Hispanic girls dying on the basis of a lie. I want to ask this. Is this high crimes misdemeanor? Is it worthy of bringing President Bush before the world and charging him with the deaths of all of these Americans and all of these Iraqis that have died? I'm just asking a question. Do you know that America refuses to join the International Criminal Court and has made bilateral agreements with 75 nations that none of these nations will ever bring an American citizen before the International Court and charge them with crimes against humanity? Do you know that the government of the United States has threatened these nations that if they don't sign, they will not get military aid? And the lie that they tell is that they're jealous of us and they may bring us. Let me tell you something. In the New York Times about a month and a half ago, they were talking about soldiers in Vietnam. And the politicians needed a high body count so that the American people would see that they were winning the war. And the brass, with an eagle on his shoulder, told the soldiers, go and kill Vietnamese. They kill men, women, children, elderly, cut off their ears, cut off their fingers, and made trinkets out of it. This is just in the 60s. They did that to us on the plantation. They did it to the Native American. I close this. Are you, the present generation of whites, any better than your fathers? No, 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 listen. You didn't do it, but the responsibility to correct it is on your shoulders. You didn't do it, but do you have the courage to right the wrong? You did not do it, but you must disprove that you are the children of murderous fathers by showing that you are different from your fathers. But if that bill to study reparations does not move out of committee and get real discussion, then you're showing us you're the same as your father. If when we raise this question all over America, instead of saying we'll study it and we'll do our best to rectify it. Tavis Smiley said that he was on that plane with President Clinton when they flew to Goree Island in Senegal. And there was a lot of black folk on that plane with the president. And some of them asked the president, President Bush, are you willing, Clinton, pardon me, are you willing to apologize for slavery after seeing the horror of Goree Island? And Tavis Smiley said, some of the blacks on the plane said, you ain't got to apologize for slavery, Mr. President. Well, you ain't did nothing like that. That's true. All right. A silly Negro spoke like that. But what kind of character did the president have? Look at the Pope of Rome. Look at the Pope. The Pope said, I ask all the indigenous people of the world to forgive the church for what the church did to the indigenous people. We're sorry. Well, that's a start. The Pope made a start. That's not enough, though, Your Holiness. See the wealth of the church? How did you get it? Are you willing to share it? To help raise the standard of those whom the church crushed? American Christians, you brag about how Jesus is a God of love. And the Muslim God is a God of hate and violence. I just talked about the violence of the slave trade and the violence that continues on our people every day. You say you love? Then do something to repair the damage. The lowest cost to repair the damage in financial terms, some of our scholars say is around $9 trillion. That's a lot of money. You don't give money to a fool. It has an elastic band on it. They give it to you and pop it. And it's right back in their hands in less than a month. No, no, no. The transfer of knowledge is the start of repairing the damage. You notice Pakistan transferred knowledge to North Korea, Iran, and Libya of how to make an atomic weapon. That's what produces equality, transfer of knowledge. Can you heal us? No, you can't. But you can support our healing. A man came to North America by himself. A man came and he had healing in his wings. A man came and he raised up another man and taught that man, and the healing process began. You can't deny that Elijah Muhammad healed. You can't deny that Malcolm X was a man in the process of healing. You can't deny that Muhammad Ali or Imam Waruddin or Louis Farrakhan and those of us who are the students of Elijah Muhammad have not been in the forefront of healing black people. You don't heal black people with guns. You heal black people with the knowledge of God, the knowledge of self. I close. Poor Michael Jackson, our brother. You notice how the media beat us up? What did we do? The Nation of Islam has surrounded and taken control of Michael Jackson. The Nation of Islam, that hate group. They have played the race card. The Nation of Islam, that fringe group. We work in corporate America. And ain't nobody said we took it over. Some Muslims have even worked in the White House. If they had taken it over, the color would have changed. Might have been called a yellow house or a black house or a brown house. But we didn't take it over just because we were there. Members of the Nation of Islam secure a lot of black professionals in entertainment, in sports, and in other fields of endeavor. Nobody accuses them of having come over to the Nation of Islam. It's a job. We're not there trying to convert the brother. It's a job. He had security around him. They was charging him $6,000 a day, $8,000 a day, $56,000 a week, and they weren't doing nothing for him and being disrespectful of him. So he asked, could we help? We said, sure. Some of our brothers work now. That's a job. He loved our chief of staff, his brilliance. He's on loan. It ain't permanent. But he has helped to save Michael Jackson millions of dollars. And I ain't going too much further. But he ain't running Michael's show. Why then are they saying this? In Inquirer magazine, it said Louis Farrakhan got $5 million from Michael, man. And some dude got a tape that Farakhan taped Michael and he confessed at Mosque Mariam. Oh, these are liars, liars, liars. Do you know Farakhan has never asked Michael Jackson for as much as a dime or as little as a penny. Farakhan is no whore. You don't buy me with a nickel, a dime, or $1 million, or $10 million, or $100 million. We as Muslims follow the Quran. We do no favor seeking gain. You say we played the race card 2 white men in California were charged with murder. Their bail was $1 million. Michael Jackson charged with lascivious and lewd conduct with a child, $3 million. Who played the race card? Who played it? We don't believe Michael is guilty. And there are a lot of people that know the mother who is accusing him and the little boy that he helped to heal, and they don't believe that Michael is guilty. What happened to the presumption of innocence? See, black people are always guilty until they're proved innocent. White people are innocent until they're proved guilty. You see that Hamitic curse? It's always working. I pray that Michael Jackson will come through this, but I believe I know why he's under attack. See, when you're allowed to become that popular, where people all over the world love you, and some even worship him and look at him as a Lord, this is the truth. You've seen those videos where women just fall out over Michael, right? Michael is growing in consciousness. That's what makes him dangerous. Consciousness plus money means power. And if he would make an album saying, they don't care about us, wise white people say, see, he's putting a message in his music and we can't have it. See, they're a little smarter than the slave master was when we used to sing, everybody talking about heaven ain't going there, heaven, heaven. We were talking about white folk not going to heaven. They talk about it. But if there's a just God, unless they change, prepare slaughter for the children, for the iniquities of their fathers. My brother from Haiti had to leave, Jean-Baptiste. But you heard on the news today that Jean Aristide stepped down. But the truth of the matter, as we learned, was that special forces of the United States landed in Haiti and took him out of Haiti. And the news media covers. And who was the person that gave us this information? The Consul General of Haiti called Jean-Baptiste, who is Haitian, and told him what went down. Do you know why Haiti is in trouble? 200 years. That's right. This is her anniversary. Yes. She's the first country in the Western Hemisphere that got freedom, not by marching and not by praying. That's right. They fought and they beat the army of Napoleon. Toussaint Louverture, Christophe Dessalines. France has never forgiven Haiti for beating their hero. Woodrow Wilson attacked Haiti, destroyed their government, and set up a series of dictators. I wish I had time, but my time is up. But nobody that loves black people and wants to see black people free will America support. They promised Mandela that they would support him, and he promised to build 100,000 new homes and give electricity to the people. But when I visited there, his ex-wife Winnie Mandela told me they failed to come through with their promise. They promised Aristide millions of dollars. They promise you They make promises only to deceive. I don't know Aristide's guilt or innocence, but I believe he was a man of the people. He was a man for the people. And any man like that is a danger to the corporate interests who want to invest in third world countries and take over their resources. You have to understand Satan. I'm going to close by reading you something from Paul Harvey. You know Paul Harvey? God. He's a great radio personality, and he wrote something called If I Were the Devil. Oh, brother, you got to help me find this thing. If I were the devil. I'll get it. Give me 1 second. Oh, man, come on. Brother Arif, come here and find that for me, please. Because it's so important to read it. If I were the devil, he said, I'm going to start it. He said, I would work to take over the most powerful nation on the earth if I were the devil. I would gain control, he says, of the most powerful nation in the world. If I were the devil, I would delude their minds into thinking that they had come from man's efforts instead of God's blessings. I would promote an attitude of loving things and using people instead of the other way around. I would dupe entire states into relying on gambling for their state revenue if I were the devil. If I were the devil, I would convince people that character's not an issue when it comes to leadership. And if I were a devil, I would make it legal to take the life of unborn babies. If I were the devil, I would make it socially acceptable to take one's own life and invent machines to make it convenient. If I were the devil, I would cheapen human life as much as possible so that the life of animals are valued more than the life of human beings. If I were the devil, I would take God out of the schools where even the mention of his name would be a ground for a lawsuit. If I were the devil, I would come up with drugs that sedate the mind and target the young, and I would get sports heroes to advertise them. If I were the devil, I would get control of the media so that every night I could pollute the minds of every family member for my agenda. I would attack family, the backbone of any nation. I would make divorce acceptable and easy, even fashionable. And if the family crumbles, so does the nation. If I were the devil, I would compel people to express their most depraved fantasies on canvas and movie screens, and I would call it art. And if I were the devil, I would convince the world that people are born homosexuals and that their lifestyle should be accepted and marveled. If I were the devil, I would convince the people that right and wrong are determined by a few who call themselves authorities and refer to their agendas as politically correct. And if I were the devil, I would persuade people that the church is irrelevant and out of date. The Bible is for the naive. And if I were the devil, I would dull the minds of Christians and make them believe that prayer is not important and that faithfulness and obedience are optional. If I were the devil, I guess I would leave things pretty much the way they are. Let's give a hand to Paul Harvey. The devil has taken America. Satan has taken America. And I would advise Jews, Christians, and Muslims to rise up against the satanic powers that rule this great nation. What does God promise? judgment. And afterwards, we're coming out with great substance. What does God promise? He said, I will take the prey from the mighty and deliver the prey from the hands of the mighty. What does God promise? I will spend all my arrows against Babylon. What does God promise? If you don't give us justice, he'll take the kingdom from whom he pleases, and he will give it to whom he pleases. What does America and Europe owe? They owe everything to Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, and all Europe and America must repent or be destroyed from the face of the earth. Thank you for listening, and may Allah bless you as I greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.